Hello, you're watching Business Spotlight. I'm Gary Alfonso. This week, the spotlight falls on Avanti Communications, and the man at the helm of its operations, Kyle Whitehill, is the Chief Executive Officer. He joins me now to talk about what the organization is about and how it's addressing some of the connectivity challenges, not only in South Africa, but also the rest of the continent. Kyle, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Gary. Great to meet you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Not many people know about Avanti Communications and the kind of space you're playing in. Perhaps using the word space, specifically. Tell us a little bit about what the company is about.
So the company was formed 20 years ago by two space engineers, and they had one fundamental idea, which was that the 3 billion population of the world that are not connected would need to find a different way of being connected than normal networks. So they created a company called Avanti Communications, and the real purpose of the company was to try and help people who were not going to be able to access the internet, either in rural areas or difficult to access areas. And so the company's purpose for the last 20 years has been very focused on how can we help bring the internet to people for the first time to allow them to make better lives for themselves.
What are some of these specific challenges? Obviously, there are very unique regions and areas, not only South Africa, but the rest of Africa. What do you know and what do you foresee as some of the, not only challenges, but perhaps opportunities in these markets?
So let's start with the challenges first. I mean, let's take a place like northern Nigeria. In order to get to northern Nigeria, you're taking on two challenges. The first one is physical, which is you can't just drive in a straight line on a road to get into some of the most rural parts of northern Nigeria. You're facing up to crossing rivers, you're facing up to roads that aren't suitable for motor vehicles, so physically getting to this location can take many, many hours and can be quite challenging. The second part, of course, was that how do you then convince one of the networks to be able to build a network there when it's a very small population and an expensive item to build. So of course the challenge therefore became, so how do I convince someone to go there, and then physically how do they get there? From an opportunity point of view, my idea has always been very simple, which is that you are bringing people the internet not because they want to check what the Springboks against England rugby score is. They actually want to do something to help themselves with their improvement in life. So can they make more money? Can they get access to healthcare? Can they get access to education? So it's all about helping building their day-to-day quality of life. So that's the opportunity, and the challenge is more physical.
So in terms of overcoming some of these, what they call terrestrial challenges, what is it that Avanti Communications, for instance, is doing to try and take advantage of that space in the market?
Okay, so let's go physical first. So physical terrestrial networks require either building a cell site for a mobile operator or digging fibre into the ground if you're a fibre operator. In these remote areas, no business case to do that. So what we have is, we have a satellite 36,000 kilometres up in space. It's about the size of a normal saloon car, and it's able to cover all of the geography. So it doesn't matter whether you're rural, urban, semi-urban, my satellite's going to be able to cover that area. So then the job is simply to get some form of what we would know as a Wi-Fi router in a VSAT dish, attach it to the side of the building, and then we're good to go.
And in terms of some more on-the-ground issues, I think different markets have different challenges. What is perhaps South Africa's greatest challenge when it comes to connectivity?
It's very different from what it might have been 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, it would have been access to fibre was actually, South Africa has the highest density of fibre companies per head of population of any country in the whole world, not just Africa. So South Africa's challenge now has become about making that network reliable. So you've got great mobile operators, great fixed operators, but they suffer from real challenges around being able to provide the power that's required in order to keep those networks available 24/7. So that's what South Africa's challenge now is. The infrastructure's there, but can they physically get that to deliver on a day-to-day basis, 24 hours?
Carl, how is Avanti Communications going about, obviously looking at these different territories, and South Africa and African countries are very different, but you're a player in these markets, and you're looking at opportunities in the market. Where do you see the greatest opportunities, not only in South Africa but the rest of Africa, not only for consumers but business and continuity and connectivity to be consistent?
Well, I think you said the right word, it's continuity. So some of my business is about taking access to people for the first time in very remote areas. That's more of a consumer business. The second part of our business is education, where we have the world's biggest digital education program in Kenya called iMalango, where we educate 300,000 school kids under 10 years old every single day. And by getting access to digital education, you can triple the amount of learning they get on a day-to-day basis versus normal education. The third one, which is I think the one that we're really interested in today, is people have built networks across Africa that are not anymore high availability or truly resilient. So what I can do is I can give enterprises, whether that's a bank or a mining company, I can give them an additional independent network which does not depend on the terrestrial networks, and allow them to be confident about providing 24/7 availability. And that's what we've been talking about this week to some of the banking industry in South Africa, is how can we help to build more resilience and independence for their business in South Africa, and then how can we connect them into their branches and outposts in the rest of the continent.
So in a way, Avanti Communications is one of the players in the market that's almost looking at trying to help not only individuals but organizations in South Africa and the rest of Africa overcoming things like grid problems and power supply, because it's obviously definitely a way of leapfrogging some of the on-the-ground issues like power generation in many markets.
Exactly. So I can take traffic from Africa and I can take it, South Africa, and I can take it straight into Europe. We completely bypass South African or the rest of African infrastructure, land it into Europe. In our particular case, we would land it in the UK. We can connect a data center in the UK, and then we can take that traffic back and land it back into South Africa, allowing South African enterprises to continue to deliver their services, their applications, home working, whatever it is. And that's the real beauty of what the space industry can do.
And Carl, perhaps finally, so you've been in South Africa, you've been visiting different stakeholders in different business sectors. What are they telling you about, taking up this kind of technology and this kind of connectivity solutions as an important part of the growth of business, not only in South Africa, but the rest of Africa?
So the first thing they tell us is, can you do even more than we anticipated you might be able to do? And yesterday morning was a good example of that, where we thought we'd gone to talk about one particular solution, which, as I said, was taking traffic outside of South Africa. People were asking us to help shore up the domestic South African networks, then the African networks, and then international. So there's a lot more scope required. And I thought a brilliant use case was the cash transit vans in South Africa, where they have to be, if they go on a job, they have to be connected. If they can't be connected, they have to stay in the depot. So we can help with that. And then the second thing that they asked for is, well, okay, that's really interesting, but I think the second thing we find really interesting about South Africa in particular is that the grid problems have caused mobile networks to not be able to deliver the normal very high service level that they are. Because we've taken for granted in the last 20 years that when we are anywhere, we can make a phone call, we can send a text, we can browse the internet, and that's not the case anymore. So we're helping to build resilience into some of the mobile operators as well.
Carl, fascinating, and thank you very much for telling us more about Avanti Communications, and good luck with your business ventures throughout the African continent.
Thank you, Gary. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for your time.
Well, that was the CEO of Avanti Communications, Kyle Whitehill, giving us an interview on the company and its role in addressing some of the country and also the continent's connectivity issues.